Hey again, it's Michael Taylor, and in this week's property video we're going to talk about a subject that's potentially a little bit taboo and possibly even a little bit controversial, but I think it's worth getting out there and taking the risk. So we're going to talk about apartments, and apartments specifically in southeast Queensland and Brisbane, and my take on why I think there's actually potential for growth over the short and medium term in those properties, even in terms of capital growth. I know people think I'm off the rocker, but there are a number of reasons as to why I think this is the case. I'm going to touch on each of them in very, very brief detail in this video. If you'd like to talk in more detail about them, you can get in touch through your advisor or by any of the contact methods below. Okay, so the first is that we're seeing very, very strong house price growth in both Brisbane, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, and this is being driven by a number of factors. Happy to talk about them in more detail, like I said, but we're actually seeing growth in the region of 10 to 15% in these areas without really any significant growth in apartments. And I think that that will, over time, readjust itself. And one of the reasons for that is that the actual gap between the median house price and the median apartment price in the southeast Queensland market is at a historical high. In fact, it hasn't been this big for well over a decade. And at some point in time, as housing affordability worsens and people realise that they can't afford a house in a suburb where they thought they really wanted to be, we'll have to look at alternative forms of property, whether that be a townhouse, a terrace home or an apartment, for example. It doesn't apply so much to people that are moving from the southern states, obviously, to the southeast Queensland corridor, because obviously they think that properties are much more affordable. But the majority of people that are moving within that area are locals, and obviously they're being priced out of suburbs, which once they thought were very affordable. The other thing one of the other things that are happening at the moment is, whether it's a short-term blip or not, but it's certainly anecdotally from people that I speak to, going to be an issue for the next year or two, is the supply and shortage, in fact, of supply of a number of building materials, including things like timber frames, steel frames, concrete, PVC piping, etc. A number of these things have been affected by COVID and obviously the huge surge in the home builder grant, and there's been some very severe supply constraints around a number of these issues, and prices have been rising significantly in these input costs for builders. And once input costs obviously rise, that obviously gets passed on through to higher prices for the construction of the property, which means that any new product that's brought to market obviously is at a certainly higher price, and effectively over time that obviously has to drag up the established properties as well. So that's one reason why I think if you look at many of the apartments in Brisbane and that southeast corridor, they're well below replacement value at the moment, and that has to change over a period of time. One of the things that I think as well that many people have a really poor memory of or poor feelings about is this oversupply of properties, especially in inner city Brisbane. And that certainly was the case 3, 4, 5 years ago. We've seen developers rush to bring on new product, and there was a huge amount of supply in Brisbane. And that was having an impact on a whole range of things, including unsold apartments and driving rents down, etc. But we're actually seeing, I've been speaking to a number of property managers that our clients use up in Brisbane, and we're actually seeing increased rents starting to happen in the apartment space, not only in inner city Brisbane, but also in the inner and middle rings as well. So that to me tells me that the oversupply of properties in that segment has really started to dry up and be absorbed. And I think that as rents start to rise, even if they're only incrementally, that will make that section of the market much more attractive to investors as well, and that will help support price growth over the near term. So there's some of the reasons why I think people are really probably not talking about apartments in southeast Queensland at the moment, but really probably should be, because I think there is potential for price growth for properties that actually work as long-term homes. If you'd like to speak to me more about it or hear more, or have a chat about property in any way, shape or form, more than welcome to get in touch. As I said, you can get in touch through your advisor or through any of the contact methods in the comments or the section in the letter below. Looking forward to speaking to you next time, and have a great day.